Welcome back. Tensions are incredibly high tonight between the United States and North Korea, two nuclear powers who both seem increasingly credible in their threats to use catastrophically powerful weapons against each other. Today, North Korea's foreign minister said that President Trump's warnings to his country amounted to a declaration of war, and that's some pretty serious stuff. Joining us now for a reaction here in New York is Daniel Henninger. He's deputy editorial page editor of the Wall Street Journal. And in Washington, Marie Harf, a Fox News contributor, and a former top aide to Secretary of State John Kerry during the Obama administration. Dan, if I could start with you, you believe that Kim Jong-un is finally starting to feel isolated. Why do you say that?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons, Dana. For one, things that have happened in the last few weeks. The United States last week announced that it was raising sanctions against North Korea, which is to say Secretary of State Mnuchin announced that they would not do financial business with any country doing business with the North Koreans. That was a significant increase in the level of sanctions, and that happened simultaneous with the Chinese, at least since June, have by and large cut off North Korea's bank accounts completely. And that means that, for instance, trade across the Chinese border with South Korea has fallen by about 75%. Fuel prices in North Korea are rising. And so I think Kim understands that he is becoming increasingly isolated. You have had comments in Chinese media, even Chinese scholars, saying Kim Jong-un has to go, which is very unusual. And I think Kim understands his problem is not only the United States, but the Chinese. I think there's a bigger wedge between China and North Korea than most people believe. Ever since Kim assassinated his uncle in 2013, who was the main contact between them, and there has really been very little contact, I think, between the Chinese and the North Koreans. And so Kim has, at this point, has got to feel he doesn't have too many options left to him.
So, Marie, one of the things that I know that you have said is that there is a concern about an escalation of rhetoric. But so what Dan was just talking about is concrete actions that have possibly led to more isolation, which might hopefully lead to a change of behavior. But in the meantime, what do you think about sort of the war of words?
Well, that's the exact issue. You're exactly right. And what Dan outlined is actually a strategy that a lot of Democrats and Republicans support. Putting more pressure on China, getting additional sanctions. That is a strategy that I think might get us to a better place. But my question has always been, what does President Trump want as the end goal here? And I am concerned that some of this rhetoric, this escalatory cycle, this tit for tat of calling each other names on the world stage, that has the real potential to, balloon out of control. And for a leader like Kim Jong-un, who's so irrational, most would say, or at least crazy, how he views what President Trump says, that impacts his calculation. And I just worry that we're rolling towards a situation where military force might have to be used or might be used against us or our allies because of this really outlandish war of words. I want a strategy that sounds like what Dan's talking about. I don't want our presidents tweeting at each other.
Well, we're not going to be able to stop them from talking to each other. But one of the things, Dan, that you think is there is a possible endgame option. Can you describe that?
Well, I mean, I don't want to create a strategy for Kim Jong-un, but if he were smart, what he would do is grab something that is already on the table, and that is the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama and John Kerry struck with Iran. I'm not a big believer in that deal, but if Kim Jong-un were to say, I'm willing to sit down and talk about doing a deal of the sort that Iran did with the United States, I think President Trump would be under tremendous pressure to do that. It would allow Kim to at least have the space within which I think he would probably cheat, but it would allow him to have a kind of modus vivendi without giving up much of his program over the short term.
So in the next couple of weeks, Marie, I understand that the president has to, under the law, basically certify whether Iran is complying with the agreement or not. There is mixed signals coming from the administration as to how that is going to go down. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, the challenge for the administration is that within the 159 pages of the deal, Iran is technically in compliance. Now, the administration doesn't like things they're doing outside of the deal. I would argue that the best way to deal with those other things like support for terrorism, ballistic missiles, is to deal with them with all the other tools we have. Why would you walk away from a nuclear deal that today is preventing them from getting a weapon? And playing to North Korea here, North Korea shows us that our options with countries are much more limited when they get nuclear weapons. that after they cross that threshold, the options for action go way down. Iran is not there yet. So why would you walk away from an agreement that, while not perfect, is preventing them from getting there?
Let me ask Daniel a final quick word, which is North Korea already, though, have they crossed that threshold?
North Korea has, well, it depends how you define it. If you define it as being able to attach a nuclear warhead, which they have, to a intercontinental ballistic missile, which they have, in other words, to be able to create a delivery system, then you have crossed the nuclear threshold. Then we were going to be in a brave and very unfortunate new world. And that's why I think Donald Trump is in his rights to talk tough with Kim Jong-un. And I have the slightest doubt that Jim Mattis and Mr. McMaster and even the CIA are at this point assembling an array of military options, gradually escalating pressure on Kim Jong-un to step down from crossing that nuclear threshold.
All right, Marie and Daniel, thank you so much. Excellent commentary. Appreciate it.